Our women. We've seen Alzheimer's because of COVID increase among African Americans, and this company includes in their policy the cash value and the living benefits for that, for stroke, cancer, heart attack, renal failure, kidney failure. All of that is included in these policies without an extra cost. And in addition, if you want to make this lifetime income, you can make it lifetime income as well. So these are just a few of the things that we do. We also offer workshops. We can come to your churches, help you set up a financial plan, a financial ministry, or assist you with websites and with webinars. So that's what Prior Financial Services does. Our logo is transforming income into wealth, and that's what we want to do for our community every day. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
And this is for you.
Yes, thank you. All right, folks. So praise God one more time for Prior Financial Services. Thank you all so much for being a partner with us, and I actually want to encourage all of you to make sure that you stop by. There's a table right outside that you can spend a couple of extra minutes with Ms. Gina Pryor and learn more about the resources that are available. I want to move quickly into our conversation because it's such an important conversation. You all know, at least all of us who are in church leadership are realizing that as our churches transition post-pandemic, but also as millennials replace Gen Z, as millennials replace baby boomers as the largest population on the earth, and also for many of our churches the largest population in our churches. We're also recognizing that we can't always just rely on tithes and offerings as income for our church. Now we know that's the biblical way that the Lord provides for his church, but it's not the only way that the Lord provides for his church. And so we want to make sure that we are adept as leaders in making sure that we're able to leverage all options and opportunities available to us to make sure that we are structuring our church for income beyond the tithe. And so I am excited about our panel today, and we're going to go ahead and ask them to come on forward and get in place as we prepare for this conversation. We have with us today Dr. Kevin Hart, who serves as the senior pastor of Christian Tabernacle Church, located in the U Street corridor of Washington, D.C. He's also the executive director of the nationally accredited Christian Tabernacle Child Development Center with 3 locations in the heart of Washington, D.C. He's the president of Pick Up the Pieces Incorporated, a 501c3 organization that serves as a resource center to those who feel as though they are the missing piece of the puzzle, and know that you cannot complete the puzzle if you do not have all the pieces. Dr. Hart earned his undergraduate degree at Southern Baptist Bible College, a master's divinity degree from Samuel DeWitt School of Theology at Virginia Union, and a doctor of ministry from Payne Theological Seminary. Welcome to Dr. Hart. We have Miss Christina Jones with us this morning as well, and she brought her fan club. She is the chief executive of external relations for BWJP. In her role, she oversees communications, fund development, partnerships, and organizational development. She has authored numerous grants and proposals for government entities, foundations, and private individuals. Under her leadership, her organization has experienced a remarkable funding surge of over 1,500%. Her expertise lies in leveraging storytelling techniques to foster meaningful donor engagement. She's also the owner and co-founder of Command Joy Company, LLC, where she equips child-serving organizations with customized expert solutions to their most complex challenges around keeping children safe. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Communication Rhetoric from the University of Maryland, College Park, and a Juris Doctorate from Howard University School of Law.
Thank you.
You know.
Okay, there we go.
It had to go. It had to be like that. Can we celebrate Miss Christina Jones, who's with us today? Last but not least, we have Mr. Matt Johnson with us, who serves as the Chief Operating Officer of National Community Church and has served as interim CFO, Business and Operations Director, and Administrator of National Community Church and other churches. He also currently serves on the Executive Committee of the Capital Riverfront BID. Matt brings a unique blend of professional expertise and diverse experiences to the church and multi-use development projects. His journey into ministry has been enriched by 10 years in professions as varied as commercial sales, law enforcement, and construction, creating a knowledge base that continues to inform his approach to problem solving in unexpected ways. Can we welcome Matt Johnson, who's here? I'm excited to have all of them here. If you are familiar with a place called the Capital Turnaround, I want to hear him talk all about the Capital Turnaround today. And so if that's all you talk about, Matt, I'm cool with it. But I don't get to moderate this one. I'm going to turn it over to somebody. There's one coming after me whose sandals I am not fit to tie. I am grateful for my brother, the pastor of Impact One Church in Capitol Heights, Maryland, one who has served the community extremely well, but also has really could and should be on this panel to give us pointers, pastors and leaders, on how to leverage our positions as community leaders and pastors and utilize our spaces and our staffs to serve our communities with excellence. And I'm going to turn the mic over to him as the moderator of our discussion. Can we give it up for Pastor Juan Wilder?
All right. Can we thank God for our president, Mr. Bobby Manning, Doctor, Reverend, Bishop. Listen, it's so good to be here today, and I know that we have so much to cover and so little time to do so. So I want to jump right into, go ahead, Mr. President. Thank you, Doctor. Jump right into what we have to discuss today. First of all, thank you all for being with us. Such a joy to share this moment with these great panelists. One more time, can we give God praise for them? And to all of y'all that are here for the first time, thank you for being here. And if you're not doing so, follow us on Instagram at EmpowerDMV and Facebook, the Collective Empowerment Group, so that you can stay up with the latest and greatest concerning the collective and all that it has to offer you, your church, and your businesses. Here's a stat that we don't assess enough, that less than 7% of churchgoers tithe regularly. Less than. Share Faith actually did a study that out of 247 million churchgoers, that only 1.5 million people tithe. Health research said that if every Christian tithe 10%, faith organizations would have an extra $139 billion a year. So how fitting is this topic for this day and age, especially post-pandemic, where we saw the tithe literally leave the church for about 2 years. And so thank you for being here. And I have some questions that I want to just kind of start and just jump in really where you fit in. And I want to ask this question to the panelists, and you all jump in however you see fit. For many pastors, the idea of relying on sources beyond the offering plate causes really some angst because of tradition. How do we best help those pastors open themselves up to innovative options concerning income beyond the tithe? How do we best, for those who are kind of hesitant, how do we open them up to the options? Okay, well, let's just start with you, Dr. Hart. Since everybody looked at you, let's start with you, and we'll work through the whole panel.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Manning and Pastor Juan. I think you just, if that didn't do it, the 7% of churchgoers are tithing. If that's not enough to push them to look for other ways, then I don't know what else I can say. Other than that, for me, it was a discipleship model. I came in, and I want to say that I had this great creative vision. No, I did it out of desperation. I had 12 members, and one snowstorm would have shut us down. And so it wasn't walking by faith, it was walking out of desperation to keep my father's legacy going. But for me, what it did was it allowed the space and the grace to grow ministry sustainable. So I didn't have to put the problem of the purse on the people, so I could disciple them to understand the tithe, which in return becomes a sustainable model.
He's just going to drop the mic. That's fine.
I think it's really important to diversify your funds, whether you're a church or a person. I think sometimes we look at tithes as, okay, that is the only ram in the bush, but God has given us multiple streams of resources in order to make sure our churches stay afloat. So when you're thinking about how do I pull this from the traditional mindset of I'm only going to get by with the 7% of people who actually tithe, to how do I make my church a robust place where we can do ministry and not have to worry about whether we're going to pay the pastor, whether we're going to be able to afford our mortgage. A lot of churches are losing their buildings because of the inability to pay your mortgages. So that's why this is important. You have to have money to do ministry. So how do we do that outside of the general just tithing?
I would back up Dr. Hart and say, you know, if you haven't gotten there yet, maybe take a look at some of the trends. I come from a church that we have no problem convincing our pastor that there are other ways to do things. Our mantras include, you know, there's many different types of churches because there's many different types of people, and there's ways of doing church that no one has thought of before. This is his driving convictions in church. So I sit in a seat where I'm trying to kind of channel that stream of energy, that stream of vision. I might suggest if you're kind of locked into a traditional rhythm of some type or can't see beyond that, borrow somebody else's faith, borrow somebody else's vision. Get out there, see what's going on, because it's not, at the end of the day, just about generating revenue. You can do ministry at the same time. You can do ministry outside the four walls of this church. And generate that revenue and then use that money again within the walls of the church or without. But it's not just about generating that revenue. Kind of get out there and see what's being done. Get inspired by that.
That's good. While you're there, Mr. Johnson, what ways can churches utilize their physical facilities and resources to generate revenue that was, you know, when it's not in use for worship services once or twice a week? Once or twice.
Yeah, so we're starting with the what question or the how question, and I might turn that back to a why question. Why do you want to do that? Because I'm going to tell you right now, it's not easy, it's not clean, it's not neat. We kind of have a philosophy that's about creating profits, generating proximity, realizing prosperity, and cultivating peace. And I know it wasn't your question, but I might dig into those for just a second here, just to kind of inform the latter part of the question. We're trying to generate revenue, right? That's the topic. That's where we're starting. So that's a goal. Whatever we're going to do is going to have to be profitable. You may see ideas out there like coffee houses. Everyone's doing the cafe. That's not an easy business. It's not super profitable. You're talking like 3% margin on that is a good coffee house. You got to be selling a lot of coffee someplace to be making a lot of money off that. So you got to be looking at things that are legitimately going to generate some profit for you. We're trying to create proximity. That means we want to bring people to us, to our business expressions, to the church. We want to be rubbing elbows with folks. And so we're looking at what those expressions and the things that we're doing in terms of how is that going to happen. You mentioned in my introduction that I've got a seat on the Capitol Riverfront bid. That came about because we are invested partners in the community. They want us to be around them. Now I've got a seat where I can speak directly into what's happening in the Capitol Riverfront District, which is the Navy Yard, the waterfront down there, one of the fastest growing areas in the city. And National Community Church has been invited to speak into that. So it's proximity with the population, it's proximity with power, if you will. We're looking for prosperity. So what does the city need? For us, you know, the mayor's office is begging for daycare. How do we deliver quality daycare? There's a dearth of kind of entertainment opportunity or arts. We got all these people down there in the concrete canyon of condos. What kind of what kind of amenities are there, and how can we be a part of delivering that to the city? We're in the mayor's office, we're on moms groups asking, what do you need? What do you want to see down here? And peace. So, distance demonizes, right? You got folks who just know the church. Oh, that's the church. I know what they're about. I want nothing to do with that. So we're looking for ways to bring folks that are not like us around us that they might like us. Right. And we're finding out that happens. So when you say, well, how can you leverage your real estate? What can we do to generate revenue? We do a coffee house. We have a movie theater. And I would say far and away, the most profitable thing we're doing currently involves renting our space out. So you've referenced Capital Turnaround. If you've been there, you will not mistake it for a church. A lot of folks will not feel comfortable with that. It does not say National Community Church on the outside. There's no iconography on the inside. We did it intentionally. And that facilities rental piece, whether it's the Miracle Theater or whether it's Capital Turnaround now, has really proven to be an enormous revenue generator, but it's also bringing people around us. It's bringing people into contact with us and getting us into the community. As we've grown into that building, we've grown out of other buildings, and we're leasing those to things like Montessori schools, Justice House of Prayer, and other kind of commissional type entities and organizations where we're receiving passive rent income now. And so it's really our real estate as a whole that we're seeing is kind of that alternate income stream for us.
Wow. And I know that sometimes this can seem overwhelming, especially when you don't have the square footage of an NCC. But you can do this at your level. When we did our first renovation at Impact One Church, the stage went from white to black. Probably lost about 10 members off of that, but God gave them back, multiplied. You know how it is when you change tradition. Don't take the scriptures off the wall. Well, we made the look more modern. And what they did was, we don't have an Impact One logo on the stage. No words, just this black, nice LED wall, some lights, a little bit of haze. And we found out that 500% over what we used to bring in revenue came because we did a renovation. Now from building rental revenue alone, I can pay 2 of my staff salaries. You understand? Well, we used to pay them out of one pot. That's the point. And I love to hear some of those things that you shared that gives us the ideas or the innovative strategies to take these resources back to our house and say, what can we do to at least create at least one more additional stream of income beyond the tithe to help our church prosper? Thank you for that. Let's go with Miss Christina Jones. Can I ask you this, as one involved in business development, what kind of grants are available to churches, and are there grants for construction, renovation, major equipment replacement? What would you say to that?
I would say anybody that I would sit down and work with, whether it's a church or a nonprofit organization, you have to do 3 things. You have to assess, you have to acquire, and you have to apply. So starting with assess. Assess the ministries that you already have that have some kind of benefit to the community. So whether it's a food bank, a diaper drive, re-entry services, domestic violence services, really look at what do you do ministry-wise that really has an impact on the community around you. Acquire. Then you look at what are some grants that could fit with the ministry that you already do. I would imagine that for a show of hands, most of you all do food drives or food banks. Most of you all probably include diaper drives and also have ministries for violence against women or reentry services. All of those can be grant funded, whether it's through the Department of Justice. They have several grants that churches can apply for, whether it's through USDA, who has a food pantry program that you can apply for grants from that, or whether it's private foundations. So looking at the George Shin Foundation or the Lilly Foundation. I had a podcast a couple years ago where we had over 100 episodes, and we were able to get funding from the Lilly Foundation to do some work around Black women and sexual assault. So we got funding to do a podcast that we were already going to do. But it was because we looked at what are the ministries, what are the outreach that we are doing, and then what are the grants that we can connect. And last but not least, of course, apply. So in order to get the grant, you can't just say, this is a grant here, this is a pot of money here. You really have to put some strategy around how to apply for that grant. Grant writing is more of a science than an art. So it is not the easiest thing to do. It is very rigid, especially when you're looking at government grants. Foundation grants are a little easier to apply for. But you need to get somebody in who can really look at what is the grant that's in front of us, and then how are we going to apply for it. I think for me, for my organization, we were primarily grant funded. We had a budget of about $2.8 million when I got there 3 years ago. Now we're at over $7 million. And that's because we looked at diversifying our funding. We got private donations, so we increased private donations over 400%. We were successful in getting, I don't know whether you all have heard of Mackenzie Scott, but that was one of my first big grants, where we got a grant for $2.5 million for work that we were already doing. We also increased individual donations by getting out the word about what we were currently doing, really engaging those donors. I think it's really important for churches. Yes, your members are your tithers, but your biggest donors are in your church already. How do you engage with them as a tither? Yes, your first priority is as pastors and doing ministry, but then what? If you have a big campaign that you're doing, are you reaching out to your tithers and saying, hey, we have a water heater that we want to repair for $50,000. We see that you are a tither. Can you put another $1,000 on this, whether you spread it out for the year or give us a lump sum? For me, it's about asking. A lot of times we don't ask because we get a little squeamish about asking, but ask. Because the worst thing that they can say is no. And I would say, too, for donor development, tither development, thank them for giving, not just from the pulpit, not just from the stage, but a handwritten thank you note goes a long way.
That's right.
So one of the things that I have my staff really engage with is any first-time donors, we give handwritten thank you notes, drop them in the mail. We don't get mail anymore, so sometimes it's exciting to get that piece of mail that somebody actually sat down, whether their handwriting was really terrible or whether their handwriting is good. It's just the thought of that you're thinking about me, and I am more likely to give to you if I think that you're invested in me and you're thinking about me. So when it comes to grants and donor development, we really have to look at what are we already doing. Let's assess, let's acquire, and let's apply.
I can see that. She is. And they all start with A. I mean, it's wonderful. You said something that I don't think we stress enough, and that's donor development. Mm-hmm. I live by this motto: if they see it, they'll seed it.
Absolutely.
And that's the position that my ministry takes as I lead Impact One Church. And one thing, why is he always going live? Why is he? I was in the food pantry yesterday, down there just showing them the food we got and just casually speaking, not understanding the strategy.
Right.
Is if they see it, they'll seed it. Mm-hmm. And that's the point. So donor development goes a long way. There's a stat out that says when you send a thank you note to a first-time donor, that they will donate again within that first month.
And they'll upgrade their donation.
They will upgrade.
That's the next level. You want to upgrade your donors. And
That's
I know
right.
I'm talking in business development speak, but churches don't do that enough. Churches don't think like that enough. So we rely on somebody giving once and they're morally obligated to give again. Sure, but what are we doing? What is our part as the Big C Church to make sure that people are engaged, to make sure that the ministry has money?
That's good. Thank you so much. Pastor Kevin Hart, what are the advantages and disadvantages of establishing community development corporations and the light through which income can be generated? Before you answer that question, we had a question that came online from one of our online viewers that said, should a goal of the church be generating revenue? And so I'll give you all a chance if you want to respond to that. I don't think that that's the only goal of the church. I think that's a strategy in itself, and I know that can become conflicted with many people. It's a great question, but I think we have to look at it like this: salvation is free, but ministry always comes with a cost.
Yep.
You can't operate the business out of church without funding, and so that's the purpose of this conversation, because sometimes the offering plate isn't enough, and I think that we have to, in our thinking, we have to evolve and understand that there are other ways. And so, thank you, Pastor Kevin Hart. Tell us about the advantages and disadvantages of establishing CDCs and the like through which income can be generated. And if you want to tackle the question as to should the goal of the church be generating revenue, you can do that as well.
The Bible says, I am a pastor, you do not take a light and put it under the basket, but you put it on its own lampstand, and it brings light to its room. And one of the things that I early on had to do is I had to find out, where do I stand? What is my lampstand? What was the lampstand that God was going to use me for to bring light, first of all, to my context, my community, because my community is my parish. And as I was listening to Matt, I realized that while we are in the same city, we have different lampstands and different contexts. So I couldn't take context and drag it back to my context. I can use concept and bring it back into my context and cultivate it for where God has placed me. And so the advantages for me is that we have 250 seats in my church. And when we get to 250 seats in our church, we're going to find another location and somebody else going to pastor. But for me, that's between me and him. I got one in me on Sundays. For me, what I realized is, while I can only get 250 people max on Sunday, I see 200 families Monday through Friday. So my dad, who was my biggest hero, he wanted to make sure everybody had something to eat. He made sure we started a food bank, and in our food bank, we used to serve 50 people a week. Now, I don't know how many of you all can relate to this, but if you know, back in the 80s and 90s, it was probably the food bank, out of the 50 people that we served, maybe 25 of them were people that didn't need food. And maybe 15 bags went bad because nobody was there to manage the food bank. And so my biggest challenge, I don't want to say disadvantage, was teaching and showing those that were there that I'm not doing away with the vision. I'm actually expanding the mission. So when we were serving 50 a week, now we serve 200 3 times a day. And 85% of our families are low-income families. So I had to show them where we're not doing away with the way my daddy did it. We are actually increasing and expanding that by using our space. I use a model, SOS, space, opportunity, and structure. I had to, first of all, when I came in, I had to, first of all, look at the space that God has me in and look at it through reality. Then with that space, I didn't say what I wanted to do in that space. I went and found out what were the opportunities for that space. So I began to engage community leaders, different organizations, and then once I found the opportunity, then I had to create a structure in that space for the opportunity. And with that, we have created, because a lot of times when people say, I want to start a child care center, I want to do this, it's not about how many children you can have. It's about the structure that allows you how many partnerships and comprehensive services you can provide to that one child. So it's not about a lot of space. It's about the structure in which you created that allows you to provide layered funding. So for one child, typically you get $125 a day for a child. So for us, each child we get paid 4 times for per day because of the structure that we have created. So we don't need 100 children, because 100 children get us the same pay as we have 400. So it's all about structure. It's just about structure. And now the disadvantages is that now with this, it comes visibility and more accountability. So you got to realize that when you open this up, that you open it up, there's going to be a lot of accountability. Mm-hmm. So you have to, your budget, has to go to making sure you got good lawyers, good accountants, and you can't, and you gotta raise up. You might have to start out by not giving your members jobs, because you have to start out by getting the subject matter experts in there, because you have to plant what you want to see grow. Mm-hmm. And then you have to strategically place your members close enough so that they can be raised up. I say this and I'm done. My director of my child development center was on public assistance. She had 3 kids. She was struggling. She joined my church, put her child in the daycare center, and she was faithful, not with her tithes, but with her presence. And I went and I spoke to her when I found out what degree she had, and I said, I want you to work in my child care. She said, no, I'm good. Because she was working at another child care, not knowing that I saw something bigger for her. That's right. 6 years later, she just bought her second house, her and her husband. Wow. She's my biggest tithe, one of my biggest tithers in my church. Her whole family has joined the church. And so I tell her, now you go back and you show those other families that's coming in there that you are the proof, so that they can see what's possible for themselves.
Wow. Wow. So you said something, and I know we're not going to get into the weeds of the numbers, but I believe that you can probably testify that you generate more revenue outside of the tithe and offering plate than you do in it. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Here's the point. DBAs and LLCs give people a chance to write a check that they won't write to your church. Make sure we establish it. We didn't change anything. We established a DBA. It's called Jairus Table Incorporated. Do you know that people write checks to Jairus Table Incorporated? Watch me. That still get deposited into Impact One Church's bank account. Because if they're given to a cause, some people, let's be honest, they're never going to come to your church, but it doesn't mean they can't write you a check. So make sure that you establish LLCs and DBAs that can support the cause and your mission. Checks and online transactions should be received from people who will never sit in your sanctuary.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes, please. We have a question from Dr. Manning, and we have our panelists here. Please.
The only thing I was going to say is specifically for LLCs, and this is my lawyer hat. I'm not giving legal advice, but legal education. If there is a chance that you could be sued by doing your business, get an LLC for that. So anything that's child related, get an LLC, because your church can and will be sued if something happens to any kid on your property. So that's why LLCs are important, for that legal shielding for your church.
On the heels of that question, and the question you asked, Dr. Hart, I want to ask Matt Johnson, because it's a continuation of one of the first things that you said. I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it so you can say it to everybody.
Hope I get it right.
Okay. How much money does National Community Church pay to keep the Capital Turnaround open? Out of the National Community Church budget. Okay.
It's a challenging question.
Yeah, let me ask it differently. Does the Capital Turnaround pay for itself?
We're in a unique position because we are debt-free on a very valuable asset.
Wow.
So if we were servicing the debt on that, it would come very, very close. We dump a lot of money into capital improvements and things, but all things kind of considered, if you took a static snapshot and said, hey, we're just doing what we're doing right now, Our rental business alone, Eighth Day Productions, which rents the Capitol Turnaround out for any number of things in any number of formats and configurations, generates a significant sum of income that could probably cover most of those costs.
Thank you for answering that
And
question.
while I have the microphone, I just wanted to get back to the question because I think it's a sensitivity that should be acknowledged. The online question regarding should the aim of the church or the purpose of the church be to generate revenue? And I'll maybe throw a question out to the group here rhetorically. There's not time to answer it, but I've been asked the question, how much ministry could you do for $1? And it's probably a scarcity mindset trap, but how much ministry could you do for $1? And the answer to that question is $1 worth of ministry. And what I mean is that the aim isn't to generate revenue for the sake of generating revenue. It's about serving and sending capacity. So the more we generate in revenue, the more we can commit to missions, the more we can commit to any number of things. I'll brag on NCC for a little bit. During COVID, we established what we called a common fund. And that was essentially a giant, benevolence fund, I guess, in more kind of common vernacular. I'll say maybe in the range of $2 million we raised in that. And I'll say roughly 75 to 80% of that went outside the walls of National Community Church. So if we hadn't generated that revenue, that's reach we don't have. That's serving capacity we don't have. I had an ANC commissioner. For those who are DC folks, you'll know them. They love to show up and obstruct anything you're trying to do in the city. And this particular brilliant woman, literally a Harvard graduate who's, had a lot to offer, but it seemed like every time we showed up to the table, she had something to say, and it was not affirming what we were doing or trying to accomplish. Within the past 2 months, and I serve on a board with her, within the past 2 months, she came and said, hey, I just wanted to tell you what you guys are doing is really admirable. You're doing what you say you're doing. You're doing what the church ought to be about, and you are a valuable servant in this community. And in the same conversation, she informed me that she attends our church now. Now that took 6 or 7 years of us being about what we say we're about. But that's what I'm talking about when I say proximity, when I say prosperity and peace. We couldn't do that if we hadn't come up with ways to generate that revenue. So it's not about, hey, how do we just build a big cushion to sit on? We're trying to pile up resources that we can turn around and distribute.
And we have questions all over. Is there another mic that we have? We don't have any extra mic today? Okay. And so that was very good. I want to just preface that statement with this, because I know we had a question online. What efforts and practices are in place to maintain purity in the church motives? And this person was speaking to the conflict of love and money. Well, the Bible does say that money is the answer to all things. And it's not the love of money that we're here to discuss. We're talking about the answer to the matters that we have for ministry as it relates to missions. All right? Yes.
I just have a quick question. You're talking about generating additional cash flows in the church using different facilities and converting facilities. But with this cash flow, when I was an advisor at Morgan Stanley, I saw that a lot of churches were actually investing and using passive returns from those investments to continue to pour into their churches. But I did not see that in our communities. Most of the monies were going into CDs and bonds, which are very low generating. Can you speak to that and opportunities or the mindset of we've got these resources, but we're not also using the opportunities to invest them wisely to generate other passive income?
Yes, ma'am. We do invest. We cover our expenses. We tithe out. and we invest.
I would say we have found a few opportunities that are mutually beneficial. They're win-win scenarios, and they're I guess I would call them interchurch. And this is really our finance department, so don't tap me on the shoulder afterwards and think I'm going to give you anything meaningful on this. But we work with interchurch agencies that take invested funds from churches and give those churches a higher rate of return than they would get in something like a CD or any bank account. And they lend that money to churches to do their work, improvements, whatever they're trying to do at also an advantageous rate. And so those are out there. I'm not gonna plug anybody, but look for those. We make regular use of them, and it's great getting that extra interest, but also knowing that the money on the back end is being put to kingdom causes.
One resource to consider is the Community Foundation the Community Foundation, and there's Ms. Darcel Wilson right over there, and they are a strategic partner of the Collective Empowerment Group. Just saying.
Yeah, my question is, you mentioned developing LLCs for different outreaches, and I wonder whether anyone has been able to pierce the LLC and get to the church.
Sounds like a legal question.
Can you say the last part of your?
The last part of that, can you pierce the LLC protection and hold the church liable for things under
gotcha.
the LLC?
So the purpose of an LLC, so let me tell you this, my business is an LLC. So that if anybody's like, oh, she cost me money or something like that, they can't sue me personally and take any of my personal assets. So same thing for the church, and this is not me giving legal advice, but legal education. I keep putting that preface on that. But it is, unless you are doing something outside of the scope of your LLC, or maybe you're being grossly negligent in certain things, but that is a case-by-case basis. So you would have to have like something in front of me for me to look at to say, okay, this factually would pierce the LLC, but it's almost impossible to pierce. It's not completely impossible, but almost impossible to pierce the LLC. I am not an advocate for churches creating LLCs unless there's some kind of legal liability, just because I believe that your nonprofit status would be able to sustain you for, this is from the grants perspective, for any grants or any things like that you want to bring in. But if you're doing anything that's child serving or that you could get sued at, I would have an LLC.
Good morning. Yes, I'm Darcel Wilson. I am the Senior Director for the Greater Washington Community Foundation here in Prince George's County. One of the things that, and has already been said, we saw lots of churches and small nonprofits having to close their doors during the pandemic. So we developed a nonprofit endowment fund where it takes a minimum of $25,000 to open a fund. It gets invested, and you have that spin-off money to use as you want to or to reinvest in preparation for the next sort of pandemic situation that may arise. So please, if you're interested, please be in contact with me. Darcel Wilson, Greater Washington Community Foundation, Prince George's County.
Okay. I want to ask one more question. I know we ran out of time, but I want to ask this because we're in this digital age. How can churches leverage digital platforms and technology to diversify their income streams? And are you aware of any churches that are currently using technology to increase their income? If so, how are they doing it?
I think you said it earlier, with you are doing the work and you're going live from the food pantry. So I am a millennial, and a lot of our millennials that are online and Gen Zers that are online, they want to see the impact. They want to see the purpose. They want to see what you're doing before they invest their time or their money. I think this whole notion that millennials and Gen Zers don't have money to give is a farce. I think those are excuses that we have, because if I have money to go on a vacation to Bali, then I have money to give to a nonprofit. So, but it's how are you tapping them? How are you engaging them? What are you doing that is really coming into their wheelhouse, and the digital space is really where it's at. So no matter if you're a church that's more traditional and a little older, or a church that's more modern and a little younger, you need to be online showing the work that you do so that you can bring in those millennials and Gen Zers that can fund those ministries.
And for us, you get a global reach with your digital platform. So whether it's social, whether it's just YouTube and you're broadcasting your service, we encourage folks to be a member of their local body wherever they are. We don't want NCC Online to be your primary church experience. But depending on where you are and what your circumstances are, NCC may be your church anywhere you are in the globe. And from there, creating those engagement points, we're trying to do, it's 2024, so this is old news, but depending on your tradition, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Create those on-ramps for giving. So by the time COVID hit, we were, 90+% digital. We're not relying on anybody to show up and put a check in an envelope. You millennials wouldn't know what a check or an envelope is.
I know what a check is.
So that's they're used to tapping on a GoFundMe, they're used to tapping on a Venmo, they're used to any of these digital, whether it's crypto, you name it, they're used to doing that. So open those avenues to them. Let them make that transaction in a way that's comfortable and familiar to them.
That's right. All right. Is there any more questions in the room? This topic, it generates so many. So we want to we'll take room for maybe 2 more questions, and then some of us got to get downstairs.
This is just a quick thought to piggyback on what you both shared, and I think that's so important. But along with the digital space, again, we all learned this during the pandemic. My church, second week of March, we went all digital, and we found over the course of the pandemic that while we weren't having in-person services, our giving went up, because all of our energy and all of our focus was built around discipleship and community building in a digital space. That's one. I think that's got to be a huge focus for the church in 2024 and beyond. And the second is those individual giving points. We're used to seeing, here's your regular Sunday giving, but I think, something you mentioned, Pastor Juan, those individual opportunities to say, here is something specific that we are doing as a church, and providing opportunities the same way that a nonprofit or a charity would, to say, this is a project, this is a need, and giving people a specific chance to respond to that is a huge opportunity to get people to respond to it, even beyond their normal giving opportunity.
Right. While we get into the next question, I believe that all of us are in our communities because we're here to respond to a crisis. We're not just churches, we're solutions. And when you understand that, that's what drives your mission. What solution, what answer have you become to a problem that's in your community? That's what helps you to generate the income. Go ahead and share.
Pastor Jerome Bowie, I have one question for Bishop Twyman. How does your food bank get funded? Because thousands of people every Tuesday, cars are going miles around waiting to get food, and you does this faithfully every Tuesday. How does it get funded?
Well, good morning. I didn't know I was on the panel, but thank you for that question, Pastor Bowie. Certainly, we have several partnerships in the DMV area. One of them, of course, being the Capital Area Food Bank. That is our strongest partner. Every Tuesday, we're averaging about 60,000 pounds of food that we're giving away every Tuesday. But Capital Area Food Bank, and it's multiple partners. It's through Trader Joe's and Target. And then we have private donors that see what we're doing, and they write us checks each month to help us feed literally about 5,000 people every Tuesday. So thank you.
Wow, that's incredible. Let's give God praise for that. All right, any more questions? Here's the last question that I'll leave you all with. Have you observed any unique partnerships or collaborations between churches and businesses or nonprofits that have proven fruitful in generating income?
Well, through our businesses and our partnerships, we just recently were awarded, as a part of our partnership, to redevelop the 14th and U Street Reeves Center. Our partnership team was awarded by the mayor, and we will be providing childcare for the new NAACP headquarters there. Also with that, we have just entered into a relationship where we're going to be providing pediatric space. And we are in the process of finalizing a 70-unit affordable housing project with a family engagement center. And one of the partnerships that I really like is the fact that we have family engagement directors that work in our office space that we don't have to pay. I just felt the Holy Spirit right there. We have MSW family engagement directors that provide services not just to our families in our child development centers, but in our church, in our community, that are funded through our partnerships. And I always say that I don't have to have it, but if someone that I am in relationship does, then I do. I don't have to provide it, but if my brother around the corner that I am in relationship with does, then I do.
Can I add too? That question is a great question, and I don't think a lot of churches tap into businesses because churches don't ask. And I think it's a part of being a little shy about asking, not knowing the route to asking. One of the things that I've been able to do with my organization is we've gotten funding from the Allstate Foundation, from the NFL Foundation, from Warner Media, from Chase Bank. Why? Because we asked and said, this is our program that we're doing. This is how we want you to plug into it. This is the benefit for you as the corporation, whether it's your logo, you get community involvement, you get seen as a community partner. It's really about asking and finding those subject matter experts that'll help you get in the door, that'll help you develop those pitch decks. I don't know how many of you all in this room have actually gone to Industrial Bank and said, hey, I want some grant funding for this. Not I want a loan, but I want some grant funding for this, and this is how it benefits you, Industrial Bank. So I think it's really important, and to create those relationships with the foundations, like the Greater Washington Community Foundation, who is doing good work. One of the ways I've been able to really tap into private foundations, family foundations, and community foundations is by developing that relationship. So yes, it takes a little more legwork for me to pick up the phone and call somebody or meet them for coffee or, have that regular cadence. But guess what? Those relationships that I've built, if I have a project where I need $50,000 from a foundation, I'm going to call somebody I already have that relationship with. And that's how I've been able to be successful in getting those 6-figure, 7-figure checks from foundations, corporations, and individual donors.
Can I piggyback on that, Pastor Juan?
Yes, Rob.
Another thing, as we are, Christina is giving valuable information for us about getting funding. One of the things that we need to leave here with is being honest about how we look behind the scenes. Because you can ask, and many of us do ask, but we get turned away because of what it really looks like. Structure, you gotta prepare. Those that look for an opportunity without preparing for an opportunity will blow an opportunity. Yep. So you gotta really, really be honest about is how I'm living conducive for how I want to live. And we gotta go back, because we can't, we have to run. It is a business. It is a business, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of times we shun the business, because it comes with accountability.
That's right. That's right.
It's an open door policy.
That's right.
I get texts every day. Pastor Hart, they're here. I said, open the door. That's right. And so we have to go back and clean up before we invite people in, and start making sure that we are living like we want to live.
Don't miss what they both said, because they both have been recipients of 6- and 7-figure checks. and you don't get that without accountability. You can get the money. They're going to come back and ask you what you do with it. All right? I want to thank you all so much. Can we give God praise for our panelists? This could easily be a part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I encourage you to connect with them before you leave. Connect with our strategic partner on your way out, and let's receive the president of the CEG, Dr. Bobby Manning.
One more time, can we celebrate our panelists? Thank them so much for their wisdom. I really want to encourage, hopefully, if nothing else, today has been an encouragement to dream. That we can dream bigger than what we have right in front of us, because there are opportunities, and I want to be clear. I want to be clear for those in the room and those online, that this is not an opportunity for money. Right. This is an opportunity for ministry. What we're describing, we're not talking about getting money so we can have money, as Matt said. We're talking about getting money so we can serve children in our community. We're talking about getting money so that we can expand ministry greater than what's right in front of us. And so it requires that we have a heart for ministry over a heart for money. And I'm grateful for these examples of folks who have a heart for ministry and recognize that there are opportunities available to us to do ministry on larger scales if we will examine them. Can we say thank you to Pastor Juan Wilder as well for leading our conversation? Couple of quick reminders. Number one, we do have some food left over, and so if you want to grab some food, if you didn't get a chance, and the food is on both sides, and so if you was mad because we ran out of eggs on this side, there are some eggs on the other side. So if y'all don't eat it, the First Baptist staff will. And so secondly, please mark your calendar. On May the 3rd is our next Power Breakfast. Y'all know, for me, if it ain't in the calendar, it don't exist. So go ahead and take out your phone, take out your iPad, put it in the calendar. May the 3rd is our next Power Breakfast. And this is kind of a series, y'all. And some of y'all may have seen what we put on social media this week. Not according to the Bible, but according to the businesses and the banks, there are two assets that are the most valuable in your church. One is your building, the other is your pastor. And we want to talk about how we protect those assets and leverage those assets to make sure that we are strong on a business side, that we go into the world harmless as doves, but also wise as serpents. And so at our next Power Breakfast, we're going to talk about protecting your greatest asset, meaning protecting your pastor, at our next Power Breakfast. So please join us next month for our Power Breakfast. If you haven't already, please make sure you sign in on your way out. We want to know that you are here, and we want to send you a thank you for joining us today. Make sure that you network, say hello to somebody, meet somebody that you don't know, maybe meet a resource that the Lord is sending to be a blessing to your business or to your church. Amen. Lord, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for your grace. Thank you for bringing us together for this wonderful event. And I pray, God, that it would not just have been great fellowship, although it is, but I pray, God, that it will also be the information or the dream or the spark that will give us a vision for ministry or a resource for ministry that we had not yet considered. I pray that you would grow us from experiences like this. And I pray, God, that you would continue to empower us to do ministry effectively in the world. We ask your blessing over your people as we dismiss. Thank you for the gathering. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless y'all. Have a great weekend.